Now, in my last One Piece analysis, I claimed that Zoro vs King would not be as good as Sanji vs Queen, as I thought the anime 100% peaked here. Not only to my surprise was I completely wrong, but King vs Zoro was even cleaner than Sanji vs Queen in the anime. And upon further analysis, I actually find myself liking the narrative of Zoro vs King as much as I did with Sanji vs Queen. And like how I explained why Ifrit Janbei was Sanji's peak, today I will be going over why KOH is peak Zoro. Now, Zoro is someone who I've analyzed quite a few times on the channel, and you guys are already aware of Bro's story, but to give a brief summary, Zoro wants to become the most goated swordsman. During his journey, he came across Luffy, who wanted the strongest swordsman to accompany him on his journey of becoming the Pirate King. Zoro would tag along and be a complete beast early on, but gets humbled quickly by the current strongest swordsman in the world, that being Mihawk. However, even when facing an embarrassing loss to a pocket knife, Zoro stares death in the face with a smile, which gives Mihawk a feeling that if he kills him now, he won't be able to see the dog that we eventually see within Zoro. After vowing to never lose again, Zoro would go on to hone his skills as he's entering more and more into the new world, discovering things like Haki before any other Straw Hat in his fight with Mr. One, being able to tap into his literal soul for power shown with Asura, and we even see him respecting Luffy so much that he's willing to damn near sacrifice his own life for the chance of Luffy becoming Pirate King. Now, obviously, he would go on to face an arguably bigger L in Sabaody, leading into Zoro training with Mihawk in order to become strong enough to accompany Luffy again. And when the time skip rolls around, we see Zoro essentially becoming the strongest Straw Hat that isn't Luffy, but his ideals weren't ever really challenged until Wano. This is mainly because Zoro imposed time skip before Wano literally has never been pushed to his limit, but all that changes when Zoro encounters King the Wildfire. Well, technically, he did fight Big Mom and Kaido before King, but you guys get the point. You see, King, like Zoro, is the commander of a Yonko, and similar to Zoro's case, Kaido recognized King's abilities and gave him the chance to join his crew in order to help him change the world. King, being a Lunarian and was constantly experimented on, would initially think Kaido finding King strong would mean he'll just be another subject to someone, but Kaido assures to him that that is not the case. Kaido welcomes King with open arms, and since Kaido essentially gave King a life, he vowed to make Kaido the Pirate King. And this backstory does sound very similar to Luffy and Zoro, but there is one key difference between the two commanders here, and that is ambition. You see, King and Zoro were both recognized for their strength, but Luffy didn't only see a strong individual like Kaido did. He saw someone with determination just as powerful as his. King isn't driven by his own goals, he's driven by Kaido's ambitions because he gave him a life in the first place. Meanwhile, Zoro, like King, would die for Luffy and is just as loyal to him as King is to Kaido. Zoro isn't driven by the fact that Luffy is Pirate King, he's driven by his own goal to become the very best swordsman. He will die for his captain if it comes down to it, but that doesn't change Zoro's main goal, which again isn't to make Luffy the Pirate King, it's to become the world's strongest swordsman. Zoro's ambition is what keeps him alive. It's how he survived against Mihawk, Mr. One, Kaku, Kuma, and even 2 emperors of the fucking sea. Even after Zoro should essentially be dead, he still combats King and risks his own life in order to master the ways with Enma. The sword was previously owned by Odin, who was recognized as one of the greatest swordsmen, period. And also forgot to mention, since his ambition literally drives him, we see him unlocking advanced conquerors, which makes perfect sense here. I also like this detail of Zoro noting he doesn't care what King is, which goes to show he doesn't look down on anybody on some condescending shit. In contrast to the dude he's fighting, who is literally named King and is saying that he's a superior race to Zoro. It's essentially a battle of the elite status versus the underdog, but somehow draws so many parallels between the two polar opposites that it feels like its own unique thing. Like, Zoro versus King isn't like Goku versus Vegeta, but they do follow, I guess, that same principle, if you understand what I'm saying. Hopefully that makes sense. But I will say this, I take back what I said in my Sanji video about Zoro lacking in terms of substance in Wano. I just wish there was a lot more with the character done here. However, it does not take away with what his arc is, and I'll say that I definitely like it as much as I do with the Sanji vs Queen stuff, if not maybe a little more. But in terms of pure scale and just comparing the fights, I mean, come on, Zoro versus King clears Queen versus Sanji. It's a night and day comparison in my opinion. The Enma power-up was just a really easy way for Zoro to, stay relevant while also pushing pretty close to becoming the strongest swordsman, but not being there quite yet. I think this is definitely Zoro's hardest fight if you're not counting the encounter with Kaido and Big Mom, because that wasn't really like a one-on-one encounter. And in terms of sheer intensity, I mean, Zoro legit had to adapt here and literally be driven by his own ambitions to come out on top. And yes, we do see this as the series progresses with Zoro, but we literally see his ambition encoding him as as if it's a Conqueror's lightning aura. I think the only thing that comes close to Zoro unlocking advanced Conquerors is maybe Zoro discovering Haki for the first time, just because we've actually never seen that, and in retrospect it is pretty crazy. But that is all I will give you, ladies and gentlemen. In my opinion, not only was Zoro versus King damn near peak, but the amp that Zoro got in this fight wasn't just a BS power-up similar to Sanji, and honestly, KOH is peak Zoro.